Coming up on Arirang News, the sightseeing boat that sank in Hungary 2 weeks ago is being brought to the surface of the Danube. Several of the South Koreans who are on board are still officially missing, but reports say there are bodies on the boat. South Korea's exports are down again for a sixth straight month. In the first 10 days of June, shipments were down more than 16% from a year earlier, dragged down by semiconductors. And one of South Korea's most beloved former first ladies, Hee-ho, has died. She was the wife of the late former President Kim Dae-jung, having fought during her life for women's rights and to promote peace on the Korean peninsula. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on our afternoon broadcast. I'm Devin Whiting. We begin with the latest on the boat accident that occurred on the Danube last month in Budapest, Hungary. That's so far left around 24 South Korean tourists dead. The boat is now being raised from the river, with parts of it already visible on the surface. And our Ko Ryun-hee is on the line for us with the latest. Ryun-hee?
Hi, Devin. Like you said, work to salvage the boat has been underway, although news reports say it is paused temporarily for now. The authorities, including Hungary's counterterrorism center, have started raising it at around 7 a.m. local time. And about 26 minutes later, parts of the boat were seen above the surface. And more importantly, during the process, more bodies have been found in the wreckage. As of 7:45 a.m., one body was found, presumed to be the Hungarian captain. And South Korean news outlets are reporting that at least 3 South Korean bodies were found on the boat as well. So the previously announced numbers of deaths and casualties are likely to change throughout the day. A total of 35 people were on the boat that day. 7 of them survived, and the rest are dead or missing. The boat sank after a cruise ship large hit it from behind on May 29th, when the boats were passing under Budapest Market Bridge. That's all I have at this hour. Devin?
All right, thank you for that, Ryun-hee. We should know more in the hours to come. Meanwhile, South Korean President Moon Jae-in was speaking Monday in Helsinki, Finland, on a diplomatic tour of Scandinavia. There, he emphasized the importance of dialogue for peace on the Korean peninsula, and he said he's hopeful that there will be more summits between the two Koreas and between the North and the U.S. in the near future. Our presidential office correspondent Shin Se-min reports from Finland.
President Moon Jae-in is floating the idea of a 4th inter-Korean summit and a 3rd North Korea-U.S. summit happening before too long.
대화의 모멘텀이 유지되고 있고 또 남북 간 또 북미 간 대화의 계속을 위한 그 대화가 이루어지고 있기 때문에 조만간 남북 간 그리고 또 북미 간 대화가 재개될 수 있으리라고 믿습니다.
Speaking at a joint press conference on Monday after his summit with Finnish President Sauli Niinisto, President Moon said the Korean peace drive has already made great progress, referring to the absence of any North Korean nuclear tests or long-range missile launches since late 2017. The South Korean leader stressed North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump are continuously expressing their mutual trust for one another and reiterated that dialogue is underway for the continuation of talks between the Koreas and the United States. President Niinisto also expressed his full backing for the peace drive, saying Finland is ready to offer its full diplomatic support.
I highly appreciate the efforts President Moon has made for peace on the Korean peninsula. Peace on the peninsula isn't just for that region, but for the world.
With Finland set to take the 6-month rotating presidency of the European Union in July, the Finnish leader promised to hold numerous discussions on how to support the Korean peace process as the head of the EU. Securing a full backing from the Scandinavian country for his peace drive on the Korean peninsula, President Moon Jae-in is a step closer towards garnering all-around support from the international community just weeks before a series of major summit meetings on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Japan and the scheduled talks with U.S. President Donald Trump. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Helsinki.
On the same day, President Moon also went to Northern Europe's biggest hub for innovation. Home to research centers and startups, he went to learn how Finland has been able to come so far in terms of innovative growth. a goal his administration shares. Our Park Hee-jun has this report.
As part of his trip to Helsinki, President Moon Jae-in paid a visit to the Otaniemi Innovation Hub, also known as the Silicon Valley of Europe. He toured the area on Monday as part of efforts to expand cooperation in innovation-led growth. The site is home to Aalto University and the VTT Technical Research Center, as well as startup research centers. President Moon said that venture startups are at the center of innovative growth. After Nokia's collapse, Finland sought to actively nurture startup companies. The country now has the highest number of startups per person, something Moon hoped to benchmark for Korean businesses. But a drive for innovative growth often leads to conflict with powerful companies. The South Korean president looked at how Finland overcame such opposition from those with vested interests.
혁신은 반드시 기득권과 이렇게 충돌하기 때문에 그게 정부로서는 참으로 딜레마에 처하게 되는데 그런 이제 기득권들의 어떤 반발 같은 것을 어떻게 해결해내고 있는지 그것도 질문을 해보고 싶습니다.
There's one single recipe for overcoming the conflicts. My understanding is that what we need to look the discussion with open mind and actually also live with uncertainty. Go ahead, even though our final goal is not very clear yet, but knowing that this is a way that will lead us forward.
President Moon also said South Korea launched the world's first 5G network, while Finland is cooperating with Korea to introduce the world's first 6G network. The two countries are scheduled to hold a startup summit to discuss ways to increase innovative exchanges on Tuesday. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
She was a pioneer for women's rights and played an important role in improving inter-Korean relations. Hee-ho, the widow of former South Korean President Kim Dae-jung, passed away on Monday. Kim Hyo-sun has this report.
Hee-ho, the wife of former late President Kim Dae-jung, died Monday evening at the age of 96. She had been hospitalized lately while battling liver cancer. During her life, Lee stood at the forefront of safeguarding women's rights in South Korea as the country's first-generation female activist. She was also a supportive companion and advisor to former President Kim, well known for his so-called sunshine policy of engagement with North Korea. She stood beside him while he ran for office 4 times and supported him throughout his pro-democracy movement. Even on the day of her husband's death, Lee spoke of democracy.
행동의 양심으로 살아가기를 간절히 원합니다. 이것이 남편의 유지입니다.
Lee also exerted efforts to improve inter-Korean relations, serving as the head of the Kim Dae-jung Peace Center, which was founded by her husband to promote inter-Korean reconciliation and world peace. In 2000, she accompanied her husband to Pyongyang for the first historic summit between the two Koreas and served as special envoy to the north.
다음 세대 분단의 아픔을 물려주어서는 안 된다는 것을 생각했습니다.
President Moon Jae-in mourned Lee's death, referring to her as a great person. He posted Twitter and Facebook messages on Monday, immediately after Lee's passing. While Lee was in critical condition, she was with her family until the moment of her death.
Her family gathered to sing hymns. She also sang along with them while they said, "Thank you, we respect you, and we love you."
A 5-day public funeral will be organized for Lee, and she will be buried at Seoul National Cemetery, where her husband was laid to rest a decade ago. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
When it comes to South Korea later this month, U.S. President Donald Trump will meet with President Moon to talk about ways to continue their coordination on achieving North Korea's final, fully verified denuclearization. U.S. State Department spokeswoman Morgan Ortagus said Monday that the two leaders will also discuss ways to strengthen the Seoul-Washington alliance. She said U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will be coming with President Trump. The exact date of their visit has not yet been made public, but it'll be after the G20 summit in Japan, scheduled for June 28th and 29th. Today, South Korea's Defense Minister Chung Kyung-do went to the site in the DMZ where a body was recently found believed to be either of an American or French soldier who fought in the Korean War. There, Minister Chung vowed to do his best to recover the remains of as many soldiers from the war as possible. He was accompanied by U.S. Forces Korea Commander General Robert Abrams and officials from the U.S. and French embassies. The body was excavated at Arrowhead Ridge, the site of one of the war's fiercest battles. The Defense Ministry said it's the first time during this excavation project, started in April, that they found remains believed to be of a soldier from the U.S. or France. An estimated 100 UN troops were killed there, and around 20 are believed to still be buried there. South Korea's exports plunged by double digits in the first 10 days of June. Data from the Korea Customs Service show outbound shipments between June 1st and 10th falling 16.6% on year to a little over $10 billion US. Semiconductor shipments in particular plunged nearly 31%. Exports to China, South Korea's #1 trading partner, also shrank 27% on year. Already, exports have fallen for 6 straight months since last December amid slowing global growth and the U.S. China trade war. And with that trade war raging on, the Chinese government has confirmed reports that it has summoned global tech companies for talks, including South Korea's Samsung Electronics. Beijing does not want these companies going along with the U.S. and cutting off Chinese firms like Huawei. Hong Yu reports.
Amid the escalating trade war between the world's two biggest economies, global tech companies, including South Korea's Samsung Electronics and Microsoft from the U.S., are under pressure from Beijing not to join Washington's sanctions on Huawei. The New York Times reported this week that Beijing summoned tech companies from South Korea, the U.S., and the U.K. this month to warn they may face consequences if they cooperate with the Trump administration's ban on supply technology and parts to Chinese tech firms. The meeting was held last week shortly after China's Commerce Ministry announced it is to release its own blacklist of so-called unreliable foreign firms in the near future. At a press briefing on Monday, China's foreign ministry did not elaborate on details, but said a meeting between Chinese authorities and representatives of global firms is nothing out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to impose additional tariffs on Chinese goods if Chinese President Xi Jinping does not attend the G20 World Leaders meeting in Osaka later this month. In an interview with CNBC on Monday, President Trump called Xi an incredible guy and admitted he would be very surprised if his Chinese counterpart did not show up. But when asked if extra tariffs would take effect immediately if the Chinese leader does not travel to Japan, Trump said yes. The remarks came as the Trump administration had been repeatedly stating that the two leaders will meet on the sidelines of the G20 summit. President Trump has put tariffs on 35 to 40% of Chinese imports into the U.S., but if talks fall apart, he says, the remaining 60% will also be hit with hefty tariffs. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
It's time now for an in-depth look at the global markets this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Kiwoom Securities. Mr. Yu, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Stocks in New York continue to rally, apparently getting a boost from the Trump administration's decision to indefinitely put off the tariffs it had threatened to put on Mexico. The S&P up almost 0.5%, the Nasdaq up a full 1%. Take us through the trade today.
Yes. If you look at the global equity market, it continues to show its rising trend. The expected additional liquidity into the system by all the central banks of the world by lowering interest rate is raising the expectations for the bull market. Also, as you mentioned, deal struck between U.S. and Mexico is raising expectation of global trade improving in the futures. If you look at Korean equity market, it has risen by almost 0.6% for KOSPI, and also the KOSDAQ was up again by 1.06%. More importantly, Chinese market have shown a very significant run today. The Shanghai Index was up 2.6%. Shenzhen Index was up 3.7%. This is coming in a surprise because the continuation of the U.S. China trade war seems to bring dent on the economic growth rates for China. But I think that people are looking at the trade surplus number of Chinese economy, where the numbers are coming in twice higher than expected, despite the U.S. Trade surplus have sharply fallen by more than 10% in the first 4 months of trading. But I guess what they're thinking is that the whole year, the U.S. China trade surplus number will go down by 24.5%, which will put some more leeways in terms of the trade negotiations. So we do think that the expectation is improving in regards to the U.S.-China trade war issues right now. The G20 summit will be most important event for this year, which will be held towards the end of this month. And we'll be watching carefully on what will be the end results of that.
Yes, indeed. Stocks, as we saw, climbing back from the big hit they took. But oil prices still down quite a bit over the past month or two. West Texas at about $53.50. Do you see that heading below 50?
I don't think that it will probably head towards below 50. If it does, it will be probably short-lived. With the potential for global slowdown due to the U.S.-China trade war, oil prices have been remaining quite weak in the past 1 month or so. If you look at it, from the recent peak of April, towards the end of April 20th, 24th, it has fallen by about 20% plus off in the last 1 month and a half. However, though, we think that the oil price should be remaining in a trading range between $50 to $65 over the longer period of time. The reason for that is because oil is about shale gas companies' price level for the break-even point. If you look at it, the shale gas companies are the ones that are putting in a lot of additional productions, and they need to generate profits to reduce huge amount of debt it carries. And I estimate that it needs to keep the oil price well above $50 per barrel in order to successfully lower the debt amount that they hold. So we think that despite all the U.S.-China trade war, the U.S. side will probably like to see the oil price remain above $50 in the future. So we think that because of that, the oil price should be in a trading range in the future.
Got it. Well, let's look at the data coming out this week and some other events. Yesterday, we had a report from the Korea Development Institute showing the local economy continuing to stagnate. On Thursday, we'll have another green book from the Finance Ministry, which will be closely watched. What else is on the schedule this week?
Right. I think that, as you know, you just mentioned, the export numbers are going down quite significantly. So the Korea's heavy dependency on DRAM is putting pressures on the economic growth numbers. Also, some of the ship orders are coming in at a much lower than expected, so which is putting the pressure. So we need to look at those numbers. Also, for the additional new numbers that we're looking at is that any new employees or the labor data that maybe the Korea will be adding additional 200,000 employees this month. People will be looking at that carefully. And also, government will be diagnosing the economy in terms of the economic trend through the Green Book. And they'll probably come out with some of the numbers in relation to what's happening to the Korean economies. Also, with this kind of numbers, they will come out with some additional measures for the monetary and fiscal policies going forward. Also, there is some news is that the interest rate cut can be exercised by the customers' employment and promotions and property increases and credit rating rises in the future, meaning that if individuals can lower interest rate in regards to the loans that they borrow from the banks, that will be positive news for the domestic consumption. So we need to watch out how well this is coming through in the future.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing going on there. All right, Mr. Yu, we'll have to leave it there for today, though. Thanks so much for your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
One of the biggest events in the tech world kicked off on Tuesday in China, where startups, entrepreneurs, and global brands are showing off their latest gadgets and innovations. That's CES Asia, the consumer electronics show focusing on the Asia-Pacific market. It's taking place in Shanghai through Thursday. About 600 firms are taking part, mostly from China, showing the latest 5G and AI technologies. Drawing special attention is Chinese telecom company Huawei, which has been blacklisted by the Trump administration from doing business with U.S. firms because of spying concerns. A senior Huawei official is set to deliver a keynote speech there. South Korea's Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor are also taking part. Scientists all over the world have been working to create a supercomputer that can solve the most complex problems using the concepts of quantum physics, where more than one reality or state of being can exist at the same time. The world's first commercial quantum computer has landed in Seoul today to mark the progress made after decades of research in the field. Oh Soo-young has more.
It looks like a golden chandelier, but you're not seeing shards of glass. It's the model of the world's first commercial quantum computer on display in the Korean capital on Tuesday. Quantum computers are being developed around the world to process information and solve problems that are extremely difficult or even impossible for standard computers.
Maybe something that might take 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years on a classical computer, you could do in a few minutes, a few hours, or maybe a few days with a quantum computer. And we think that will happen across a range of industries. It could be the creation of brand new materials. They could be household materials, but they could be new metal alloys for cars, for airplanes. They could eventually be new drugs for medicines. Financial services is another area, so banks are very interested in that.
The IBM Q may have provided a conceptual turning point, expanding quantum computing beyond the walls of the lab. But when it comes to outperforming a regular computer on meaningful tasks or achieving the so-called quantum advantage, most scientists say we still need more time. Normal computers store data in binary form as either ones or zeros. However, quantum computers use a unit called a qubit, which can exist as a 1 and a 0 at the same time, in what's called a state of superposition. As both possibilities exist, this increases the amount of data the computer can store or process, meaning it can run through all possible outcomes at once. However, it's not just the number of qubits that matter. Keeping them in a workable state or coherence time is one of the biggest hurdles in quantum computing.
We have to convert the number of qubits into effective number of qubits. So what is important is a connection between the qubits. So if you have more connections between the qubits, then you have higher capacity to handle more complex problem. We envision that the real practical applications will be found once the machines achieve 100 qubit level.
Despite the complications, researchers and firms are striving to harness the quantum advantage, which could take the AI revolution and data clouds to a whole new realm. The global quantum computing market is expected to triple to nearly $283 million by 2024. While quantum computers are unlikely to replace standard ones for decades, if ever, scientists say it's clear that a new era of computing has begun. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Cost-conscious consumers in Korea are getting some good deals on products that are not new but almost are at stores that sell refurbished goods. It's a fast-growing market, as our Cho Sung-min reports.
The sofa she's sitting on is a refurbished piece she was recently lucky enough to get her hands on. Originally retailing for around $2,000, she got it for less than half that.
I went to my sister's place and compared her new sofa to mine, and there was literally no difference. Also, it's cheaper and was delivered quickly.
Refurbished products have been disassembled, cleaned, fixed, packaged, and put back out on the shelves. No performance flaws could be found in these goods, but because they're not new, the prices are 30 to 60% lower than what they would have sold for originally. South Korean consumers are becoming more cost-conscious. Industry experts note that, unlike the past, consumers feel it's smarter to buy refurbished goods, and now it's become sort of a trend. The rising number of warehouses and online stores that strictly specialize in refurbished items is an indication that it's becoming a trend, and the kinds of things for sale now vary from clothes to cosmetics and even food.
As the trend changes, we're seeing more customers visiting our store and buying more than what they initially planned to because the prices are so low.
With the popularity of refurbished goods on a rapid rise, experts believe the Korean market for refurbished goods has already grown to more than 1 trillion won, or nearly $850 million, and expected to get even bigger. 조성민, Arirang News.
And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming up at 7 p.m. Korea time.